she has a dad who's very like, what's the word? Very reserved and like not shy, but he's not outgoing. But not outgoing. What's the word I'm looking for? He's not like overly expressive, but he's very friendly and amiable and very nonchalant. But at the same time, he doesn't go out of his way to, you know, be like super social or anything like that, or super outgoing. He's just sort of minds to himself, and then will talk to someone and then share a laugh with them, or things like that. But he's very like very normal. Like, he's just kind of a very normal guy, I guess I could put it. Rather unbothered and nonchalant, but also very supportive and helpful and understanding, I guess you could say. But also a little silly and goofy. He's, I guess, kind of like Melody in that way, where she's very unself-conscious about how she may appear to others and things like that. He's very like not overly concerned with looking sterile or kempt. Not that he's messy, but he's not really like hyper fixated or focused on things like that. And what he does is he builds and repairs radios and like electronics like that. He's an engineer, basically. He works with mechanics and engineering, not vehicles though, things like radios, transceivers, radars, different devices like that. He works with electronics. He's kind of like a Radio Shack, I guess you could say. But it relates to how Melody gets when she's in the water. And I imagine very much so that when she's in the water, she's like tuning herself and you hear like radio waves. She's very much connected to her family, and there's like little bits of everything running through. But and then Melody's mother is very feisty and aggressive, and she's very what's the word? She's not afraid to fight fight you. If that makes sense. I'm trying to paint a picture of her, especially the one that I have in my mind. She's the one who's very kind of grungy and punk. She'll like she'll try, but she's like trying to get better, less like volatile, especially after she had Melody. She mellowed out quite a bit, and she tries not to swear in front of her daughter. Will tell Melody not to repeat anything she says during certain moments, and she's conscious of her anger and aggression and sometimes like forcefulness. So she tries to sort of like balance it with an attempt at cordialness, but she's very enthusiastic, very happy, very... Well, maybe happy's not right the word. Not the right word. She's happy. Well, I wouldn't describe her as, like, Pinkie Pie on My Little Pony. She's not like that. It's not her personality trait. But she's chipper. She's joyful. But that maybe the best way I can put it is full of energy. And that energy can shift uh, between aggression, frustration, happiness, joy. Not in an extreme way, but not in an unhealthy way. But she's very energetic and empathetic, and that she can switch between. She can switch between being like super happy and then like get frustrated when like someone does something stupid. You know, I guess that's the word. She has her opinions, and while she's generally chipper and she treats her family very well, there's nothing like she's not she's in no way a bad mom or unhealthy or like how do I put it? Maybe let me check if I wrote some notes on this subject. Hold on, checking my notes. No, don't put a header. Just search everything. Melodies, mother. Really now? Wow. Okay, I'm just gonna have to remember on my own then. But her mother's you can see very clearly where Melody gets her more like competitive, more dramatic, more cool side, if you will, where she gets like a little more impatient, a little more forceful. Slightly more abrasive, you know, but her mother is more in that direction of just like being full of energy and just like enthusiasm and pep, and then just like, you know, sort of like, oh come on, you know, that kind of thing when something goes off. But not at her family, just like, you know, sports team hit the ball the wrong way, or you know, it has that kind of feel to it when she's upset. It's that kind of moments of just like being disappointed because it could have gone so much better, you know, that kind of feel. And Melody's mother, she works partially as environmental activists and as an environmental activist, and will organize like demonstrations and stuff for mainly concerning like the local area. If there's like a situation where there's lots of trash in the local like waterways, or pollutants are discovered, or there's a health hazard related to like the area, or if there's like a compromise to be made on a building project, or if something is going to severely lower, you know, standard of health, chemicals, you know, things like that. That is as what she spends a lot of time doing is organizing and doing things like that. But let's see. There was something else I wanted. Oh yes, that's right. Melody's mother is. This is something I've been thinking about, and I'm still going to think about it. I'm pretty sure what I want, because it's one of those things where like the characters are never actually going to mention the name of the place they live in, if that makes sense. There's never going to be a reason really to see a map of like the world. There's never going to be an instance where it's like, we have to name a country, you know, but I'm pretty sure what I want is that the world of Why Do We Have Eyes is, and I see this all kinds of like animal character settings, you know, I've seen a lot of them where it's like the setting literally doesn't matter. None of the characters ever bring up where they live. You never see street signs or a map or anything like that. You never see street signs, you never see a map, you never see any markings. There's never any reason to indicate where the characters just live in a place with architecture and the characters in a coffee shop. Coffee shop. Where's the coffee shop? It doesn't matter. Where's the architecture of the building. I guess this is where you actually get into coding when it comes to things like that, and not just the way something is presented or represented or depicted. This is actual coding, which I guess you could say that in a lot of stories there's coding that the setting that they live in is, if it existed in real life, it would be America, if that makes sense. I feel like there's definitely a lot of stories that I have seen like that, where, yeah, there is no mention. Maybe it's like a university or a city, and it'll have a fictional name. But, it's every the way that the characters go about their society, the way the buildings are structured, the general architectural design, the sort of day-to-day life. It is very much coming from a specific. It's basically, without naming it, that is actually how coding works. It's not just making an allusion to something or a reference, or hiding in elements of something else or references. Coding is when you have something that is fictional, that is not literally something, but you can actually say that if it existed in real life, that this is what it would probably be. It is when the author, not just projecting your own stuff on it, or it is when the author creates something that very clearly takes a lot of cues or stereotypes, or no, don't scratch that. We discussed, you cannot scratch that. Down you go. All right. Down you go. No, down you go. You can't scratch that. Look at that. You've already frayed so many of these strings. Down you go. There you go. Okay. Anyway, it's when it's like, oh yeah, you can see clearly what this would be if it existed in real life, but it's something else. But it's that kind of thing where it's usually it's yeah, this city hasn't been named, and there's no signs or any reference to a particular state, but it's pretty clear that if this existed in real life, this is supposed to be America. This isn't just any country. It's American culture. That's what it's pulling from. That's different from when someone is inspired by something and directly pulls cues from it. That's different from designing a sci-fi society and pulling architecture from New York, or designing a planet and it's full of desert and cacti, and there's space cowboys, but it's not coding to Texas. It's inspired by Texas. It is based off of. There's a difference between based off of and inspired versus this is unrelated, but if it existed in real life, this is clearly what this would end up being. Versus when a character is already what they would end up being in real life in the story. And that's where you get the distortion of it's not necessarily all, it's not all for interpretation or to just an excuse to make a character what you want them to be. There's a certain sense of purposefulness, but openness to the whole. It's not purposefully named at all, if that makes sense. It's not the clearest explanation, but It's as much as I'm gonna do right now so I can get back on track. But like sometimes the character in the story is just that, and if they existed in real life, that is exactly what they would still be. Even then, there is no like additional, like, that's just what the character is, and it's not meant to represent or be like, it's not meant to like be hidden for something else or things like that. That's actually like what the character is all the way through into real life as well. It's not like subliminal or symbolic, versus when there actually literally is just like, oh, okay, that you're not acknowledging it all, and in this fictional world it's something completely different, but you're very purposefully pulling certain phrases, behaviors, or stereotypical, archetypical, associations and journeys with specific things, and then using that on this. And is that your okay? There are times when that is a thing, and then there are most of the times when something is just exactly what it is. Like yeah. Anyway. But there's a difference between that and symbolism being based on, inspired by, referencing, or making allusions. And anyway, back to what I was talking about. I was thinking about it, and I'm pretty sure that the setting overall, for me, would actually be like the United States and things like that, and that if it's not that, here's the thing, right? It would be that, but maybe like the cities are different and like the countries are different, if that makes. So there's like United States, there's America, there's Canada, there's like Brazil, there's Africa, there's South Africa, there's the Middle East, there's Asia, there's China, there's Japan, but maybe not all the time like exactly in name, if that makes sense. You just know that there is a country out there in this world with the same shape as ours that is an equivalent to Japan, but they never actually say the words Japan or that. Or that, such a place, they never name such a place, that it exists, but it's out there, and that's where, someone of this culture, a similar enough culture would come from. Or maybe, like naming the country, but it's ill-defined if it has the same cities or districts or regions, that kind of thing. And that's something I'm going to keep thinking about, because it's not really like, the point isn't the broad world, if that makes sense. That part really doesn't matter at all. But I don't think at least it would be any broadly different fictional world. Not that it would ever really even need to be shown. I think if there was a map, it would just be like of the city they live in, or the local district, or the town, the suburb, things like that. I don't think it would ever really need to grow into depicting the scale of the entire world itself. But anyway, let's see. So I talked about that. Yeah. Okay. Anyway. But yeah, Melody's mother. I think I've pretty much gone through everything there that I wanted to discuss about her. But yeah, her and her husband, they had a child. That was Melody. She was born blind. That was a whole thing, them raising her and growing up. She got into the radio shows that would play out of those old radios. She got into sports. And, alright, The second character I wanted to talk about is Kat. Kat is how would I say that? Kat is Melody's best friend. How else would I describe her? Kat is, I guess I could go with her personality next, and then physical. Yeah. Kat is behaviorally imposing, cold, blunt, incredibly perceptive and understanding, but still, like, she's, how would I describe her? She's very looming. She likes to keep at a distance and not express very much. She sort of like looms over situations and just sort of like keeps a calm posture the entire time. She doesn't run unless she needs to. What's the word? She's very in control. That's how I would describe it. She's very under control. She doesn't emote more than she needs to. There we go. She's very, like, efficient. There, yeah. The best way I would describe Kat is that she's very efficient and minimalist. She doesn't emote more than she needs to. She doesn't express more than she needs to. She doesn't talk more than she needs to. So she talks in, like, very short sentences, and if she needs to go longer, it'll be like a short burst with very specific wording. She doesn't wear more than she needs to. Not that she's like that could be taken a few different ways. How do I put that? She wears like a overcoat, dress outfit, I guess, more than she needs to for her goals, which is to be seen as that kind of like authority figure, powerful. Not that she wants control or power, she just kind of wants people to leave her alone, if that makes sense. So, and that's part of it, you know. She lives a life where she doesn't interact any more than is necessary. She doesn't wear, like, flair or pins, buttons, necklaces, jewelry. Her outfit is the absolute, is the bare essentials to convey the sort of, like, professionalism that she wants to embody. Yeah, because that phrase, it depends on the character, what wearing the bare essentials means. For Kat, the bare essentials is something like, just like a gray coat, white socks, just like just like gray, no color, basically, is the best way to put it, is she's super minimalist, conserves as much energy, conserves any energy she doesn't really need to spend, and like doesn't exert more than she needs to. Very intelligent, academically smart, but that changes when it comes to her being a Be careful with that. I'm just gonna put it back. You're free to play with it though, but it's not gonna be as fun. There we go. Alright. But she's like very stoic, and as I was saying, she conserves her energy. She's very intelligent and smart about mapping out just like her exertions, her emotions. But when it comes to Melody, that's where you start to see her change in her general like approach. When Melody is around, Kat will suddenly start like And here's the thing is that Kat partly relaxes around Melody due to the fact that Melody is blind. It's not the whole reason she's her friend, or she's not like taking advantage of her or anything, but the you can notice a notable softness when she's around Melody. Melody's the only other person you'll see her really hanging out with, and she'll dote on Melody, find food for her, and get her to taste test stuff. And even then, like, she doesn't, like, drastically shift. There's just a warmness that comes over her general demeanor when she's with Melody, but she's still very, like, rigid and still. And she's still very rigid and still, and doesn't really like emote too much, but you'll see her smile like a little more often, and she'll follow Melody around, and then when it's time for them to go their separate ways at the end of the day, she'll just like disappear all of a sudden. And that's the other part of Kat's personality, is that whereas with Melody, her animal instinct thing is more like playful, and it sort of integrates into the rest of her personality very like smoothly and neatly. With Kat, she'll have like a drastic shift where she'll go from like I guess that's another part of it, is that another part of Kat's personality is that she kind of tries to match what's going on around her. Sometimes. Specifically when she's around Melody, Kat will kind of like sometimes match the energy of what she sort of thinks Melody expects of her. What she thinks that is like expected in that moment. Even though most of the time, on her own, she's rather apathetic to various situations outwardly. She's processing it, and then she just very calmly just kind of moves on. She doesn't express too much, very cold, calm, calculated. But when she's around Melody, there's like more instances where she sort of like exaggeratedly tries to emote. And it just kind of comes off really strong. But then, on her own, though, she'll... One thing that's sort of the concept for Kat is that out of the three main characters, she's the one who most consistently displays the more, like, animal instincts that she's based on, of the animal that she's based on, just in her regular behavior. So when she really, and that's the thing, she's also athletic in sport. Oh, that's another thing I should mention, is that Kat has an unusually like tall build. She has broad shoulders. She's very like toned, muscular, very I remember one line that I wrote down is that she's kind of built like a football player. she's built like a football player, but then she has all the Cat attributes of being incredibly flexible and like squishy. So it's like rubber, it has that kind of like, it's somehow hard but also soft and flexible, so she can still like pop through places and like bend and like move really quietly while also having this like quarterback build. if that makes sense. She's still got all this cat stretchiness and compress. I mean, even her name is the bare minimum to convey she's a cat. Her name is Cat. That's it. That's the extent of her being. But and it's not a nickname. That's her name. It's Cat. But yeah, she's got all, and more readily you can see the more like feral type attributes and instincts, where she'll suddenly like just like you'll see the more animal like movements incorporated, whereas other characters, they'll tend to stick to the more like humanoid type movement, you know. They'll walk like people do, run like people do, and when they get excited, they'll, you know, just like basically like humans have. But when Cat starts running, she enters a more animalistic stance, sort of like running on the pads of her feet, a slight lunge. She'll suddenly like jump onto a tree and like, you know, basically like seeing a cat, like an actual cat's movements. She'll like jump across. She'll her you know, when she's like perching, instead of like a person, you know, like a human sort of standing on the branch, her legs will be like, oh, what's the word, like she'll have that sort of like animal preying on you from a branch type stance, where her legs are fully pulled up, her body's in between, her arms are like set between her. You can see her tail like behind her, and her head is like slightly craned. She assumes that sort of more animal like stance, and you'd be able to see more of those kinds of more of that kind of behavior and stance and posture just regularly from her. So there's sort of like a contrast where it would be this sort of thing where her movements and body language almost feels inhuman, like inhumanly manicured and poised, structured, just like paced. You know, the pacing of her steps is consistent and perfect, and when she moves, it is in an efficient, killer line, you know, no wasted energy. And as she walks, her stance, you know, the rest of her body doesn't really move. Meanwhile, Melody's walking next to her and sort of like a slight bounce, you know, but with her, it's like step, 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 step. And then when she moves, it's like a sudden explosion of movement, like whoosh, like switching from the really poised calm to sudden strike, and she gets really flexible and like unstiff all of us. That's a good one. She goes from like stiff to flexible within like seconds. If that's the way to put it. She has that like cat-like attribute. Yeah, and she's like really perfected pace. And like that, the slight look. Yeah, and like when she runs, but the difference is that hers, it still has like a humanness to it, where there's like perfect posture. So even as she's running in a slightly more animalistic way, she's still using like perfect Olympian gymnast like form as she's running. So that's part of the like idea behind her movement and things like that, is that she's got this mix of very human but inhuman at the same time, because she's not a human, but it's that, yeah, basically that's it. But there's not much like backstory to do because that's not really important. It's not important immediately to her character. So, I've got no family to bring up. I've got no, nothing like that I did for Melody. Kat's very, like, her character is herself, that kind of thing. And that's another thing I should mention too, is like, yeah, she's very independent. Like, she has other people she hangs out with, but they're not really like her friends. You only really see her hanging out with Melody. I think the thing about Kat is that her character is best brought out in her interactions with others, because on her own and how others react, the contrast and the best part with Kat, the best way that I figured to really bring out her character is the way that she contrasts, bounces off of, and interacts with others, rather than immediately having an apparent personality. It's more so the idea that she's kind of like a brick in the wall. You know what I mean? And then more and more of her is brought out. So when I write her, it's less of how I do with Melody, where Melody is bringing her character and acting with absolute agency to everything, making her own decisions, coming up with ideas, whereas Kat is more like seeing what she does in response to everything that's going on around her, and how she handles the situation, and the ideas that she comes up with. That's the best way right now I can think of to describe Kat. I don't know. If anyone is hearing this and they have more questions later, feel free to ask them. Because I'm trying to think of questions to ask myself. And I've been talking so long and I'm tired enough that I can't quite think of them all. But let's see. But the next character I wish to talk about is Pancake. Oh, there was something... I'm sorry. Basically, Melody's mother would come from whatever this world's equivalent of the UK is. That's her... Not that she was born, but she's like first generation kind of thing. Or maybe not. I don't know. Me think more on that. But, her... That's something that I've written into Melody's lines, is that Melody will commonly use like UK / like British slang that she picked up from her mother. So essentially like a union between British UK based mother, whether she's first generation or the first to come over, and basically American father, if this place is America, which I think it will be. But American father, and then Melody, she's got like mannerism, language mainly is what I'm referring to when I say that. That kind of reflects that. But anyway, the next character after that is Pancake. Pancake is the third character, and he is a dog. He is a dog who is very wealthy, very rich. He comes from a how do I like multi-billionaire legacy family who has their headquarters around that area where the other characters live. And basically he how do I put it? Well, first off is a running thing is that all of the members of Pancake's family are named after what's the word? Breakfast foods and stereotypical dog names. So basically, it's sort of like a high society thing. The other characters, they're not named things like Snowball or Fifi or Rover, Fido, Shadow, Jumper, things like that. Dog names, the sort of dog names you'll find. So his name is Pancake, and everyone reacts accordingly to the fact that his name is Pancake, because that's not a normal name. But basically the idea is that the names we give dogs in real life, in this setting, they're used as like a high society, kind of like pretentious names and things like that. So Pancake's name is Pancake, and he's got like siblings also named after food, various kinds of food, various objects, stereotypical dog names, things like that. And as a sign of this, as actually part of his heritage, is that he wears something on his head that could be pancakes, or just a pancake hat. Anyway, it looks like a little stack of pancakes with a little bit of butter on top, and like some texture, and what appears to be, could be syrup, but it looks like he's got a fresh stack of pancakes on his head. Are they actually? Are they not? I'm not telling. But he's... I'll start with his personality. Let's see. Okay. So basically, the best way to put it is that Pancake is... He has lofty, altruistic ambitions, but tends to get in way over above his means or his head when he when he acts. He's, what's the word? He's very concerned about his image. He's very concerned about, but not in like a egotistical or arrogant way. I'll just say with like what has been written for him, which is he goes out of his way to like help wash dishes. He like stays there as long as he can until the person is finally like, all right, gotta let you go, and then he moves on. And he doesn't even like go dressed shabbily. He'll go everywhere just in his suit. And what I've written for him, like, yeah, he'll go wash dishes, he'll go clean up, and he'll still like have his suit, basically. Like, he won't be necessarily wearing it while he's doing it, but he'll fold it up nice and neat, put it to the side, and then like put it on again. But he'll still have like his undershirt. So he's very well kempt. He takes very good care of himself. Very well manicured. He has a very strong sense of justice. And things like that, but he's not too sure all the time on how to actually carry out what he's going to do, or he gets into something that's like a little too big for him at that moment. He hasn't really thought it out quite well yet. But another thing about him is that there's like a underlying bravery / boldness to courage, like if he truly, if he believes what he's doing, he will apologize if he truly feels that what he has done is wrong. You can't, like, trick him into apologizing. He's not, like, flimsy, or that's the thing. He's willing to take everything that comes with what he's willing to take everything that comes with what he's going to do. So he's not scared of facing the consequences when he takes on an action, or he'll stick through it, but he'll be knobbly-kneed and terrified sometimes when it's happening, or like freaking out. I'd say of the three, he's the most emotional, and yeah, I'd definitely say he's the most emotional. Oh yeah, he's a golden retriever. I should mention that. Or I don't know if he's a golden colored dog. I'd have to actually no. I think I based him more. He's like a mix of a couple of he's a mix of a couple of golden dogs, like blonde golden furred dogs. I'd have to look up the one that he's closest to, but yeah, he's a mix of that. He's very, very expressive. Has a big heart, big heart. Is willing to take, egg on his face. Although he has a sibling who probably has that. But he gets very nervous around. There's sort of like a contrast between him and Kat in regards to like some areas of overlap, but done for entirely different reasons. Whereas one of them is more of essentialism, he's more of just like feeling undeserving to really have friends or get to know people, or just afraid of things falling apart on him and things like that. Like he's afraid of the certain image part and being left and things like that. He has qualities like that, and he's more I think of the three of him, he's the one most going out looking for situations, if that makes sense. Or rather, he's the one who puts himself in the position to end up in a situation most out of them. But like some other, this is the point where I'm not really into the whole like OC bio kind of thing, original character bio page, like very kind, respects so and so, hates discrimination. It's like, that's not a personality. That is not a personality at all. The best way I can figure to describe a character's personality is going by what they do, what their actions are, or finding a close comparison. But basically, another sort of like preview example is that Pancake, when he finds like certain things that like, oh no, it might endanger the kids, he then takes it on himself to go on a journey to like take care of it, so that basically there's always someone on his mind a bit too self-sacrificial at times, but at the same time he's incredibly warm, he's incredibly joyful, tenacious. He'll find a way to do it. He's not going to stop. That's partly where Melody comes in to help him sort of push over that hump that he's gotten himself into, and then Kat is sort of like the executioner of the idea, if that makes sense. They're like a little RPG party, and they each have strengths that sort of push the goal over the finish line. But one thing he like commonly does, and I'll do another thing that I wrote, is that he at one point gets really, really upset with Melody when they first meet, and then he immediately apologizes as soon as he calms down. It was something he's very sensitive about, which he usually doesn't get. He usually remains very polite and calm, but it was like the one thing that like pushed him over the edge. And here's like another thing of the animal instinct versus is that it's very rare to see Pancake getting angry. So Melody sort of has like this melding of the more animal instinct, and they sort of like subtly emerge in her personality under certain circumstances. Cat, hers is like it pops up. You know, there's like a more of a noticeable, instead of a shift, it's like a hard turn from like inhumanly human to sudden animalistic style. Whereas Pancake, he's very refined and like natural, calm, just naturally. You can tell he's just got it, you know. But then, if he's, and like it never comes out. That's the part with Pancake, is that like you would never really see. He's basically got it down in this world. He's basically what you'd typically see, which is not that Melody's isn't typical or Cat's, but it's sort of like what you expect out of, you know, setting with animal characters, which is that they more or less behave like humans, just depicted as animals or stylized as animals. That's pretty much what Pancake has got, is that, you know how in a lot of settings it's like, you know, this character is this specific animal, is there a reason behind that? It's like, no, I just liked that idea of that animal pairing, but really it's just like a person who is just this animal. You know, that's kind of what Pancake is that he's got personality traits that are basically, and mannerisms and behaviors that are basically just like human. Like that's the best way to describe them. But then if you really, really, really push him or do something that gets, suddenly you'll see that like it'll like explode out of him, and out of the three it's the most like uncontrollable for him. It's sort of like seeing his genetic ancestral like like it is like behave, you know, how am I supposed to put it? It's like his ancestry just kind of like, that's not the best way to put it either. It's like, it's not literal, but I guess the best way to put it is he's sort of like, yeah, I'm not quite sure how to say it. I guess I'll just describe the image in my mind, which is that, you know, normally he's very calm, kind, chipper, very basically human, but then if you were to ever see that instance, he would just like, you know, it would be like a dog just literally barking. He would literally be all the civilized domestication. Yeah, I mean, dogs bark and do that, but I think you get the idea. All that, like, sort of civility and all that is immediately replaced with just, like, dog aggression. Just, like, barking aggressively. The sort of, like, yippy barks that dogs make. And basically he goes like full animal for a sec. Not like, I think that's a key difference too, is his body language wouldn't go full animal or anything like that, but You can, like, he'll start growling uncontrolled against his will. He'll just start growling, and he never growl. I mean, yeah, he never growls or does any. Again, suddenly he'll just start growling, and he loses the ability to speak, and then all of a sudden, just aggression, barking. It's the only words that'll come out of him, and it'll take a minute for him to calm down. But during that time, I guess, like, the best way to put it is that mentally he's still all there. He doesn't start, like, acting like a dog. He just acts like an incredibly angry human being, but he loses all ability to speak and is instead just barking, like rageful barking and growling and snarling, showing the teeth, all that instinct kind of coming out for a second. And then, like, once he calms down, it all goes away, and he becomes, just like human-like, basically, again. I'm trying to think if there's anything else regarding different personalities. Again, if you have more questions, think of better questions than I'm asking myself right now. I'm sure there's more, but I just can't think of it at the moment. But, basically, let's see. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he is very wealthy. Like, he has his own place. He is independent. He makes money on his own and has inheritance that he gets from, he's very... Oh, yeah. The next thing to do is sort of describe the sort of dynamics between them now. Which is that, like, Cat follows around Melody. Melody likes having Cat's company. Pancake and Melody bond over similar personalities and shared food. Cat dislikes Pancake because she finds him annoying. Cat dislikes Pancake because she finds him annoying at the start. And just, like, having three, like her whole minimalism necessity thing, her preferences, her tastes, the way she sort of, like, figures things, three's a crowd sort of thing. A sort of, like, just become crowded and unnecessary. And also, Pancake was rude. So that's a point against him. For one instance. That's another thing about Cat, is that she'll hold a grudge for quite a while. And just, like, hold it against you for a minute. But she won't go any farther than what is reality, Like, once she tests things a couple of times, when she figures out the person and sees who they are, she won't hold on to that. She'll start to treat them differently, based on that. She's fair. It may not, be especially, what's the word, sweet, but she is fair. But, Pancake himself... Yeah, so basically between Cat and Pancake, it's a bit of just, like, not rivalry, not really... I wouldn't say rivalry or tension, but just, like, disagreement over getting things done, who drives the energy of each situation, getting caught up, and Cat just, like, kind of not wanting to deal with his stuff, and then, like, Melody ends up getting interested in whatever it is. It's like it is a whole thing. Cat treating every situation with the exact same amount of seriousness, no matter what it is. And it usually just ends up looking violent. Yeah. Anyway. Let's see. This has gone on for a little bit, so I'll get more to wrapping it up. But basically, that would be like your core three. And then... oh yeah, something I should mention is like Pancake. Part of his thing is an estrangement from his family, and that would be its own setup. That would be its own thing, basically. But yeah. So basically, it would follow that core cast of three as they go about their lives and their different situations and interacting with each other and figuring out what each other, wants, or their relationships changing and things like that. Growing to understand each other more fully. I hesitate to say what the characters want, because I think that especially for Cat, some of these can go a little farther than I'd want into like over explaining things and saying too much. But if you can think of a really good question, I might be able to answer it, or inclined to. My limitation doesn't have to be your limitation in terms of ability of thinking about how to go about wording it in a responsible way. But and then there would be like other characters who come in and out, who have relationships with each of the three main characters. So like side cast moving in and out, basically being the ones who sort of provide the impetus for the situations that, if it's not a personal thing that the character wants to do and that's driving the situation, it'll be one of the side characters or a side moment introducing something that the characters will be characters to and around. But let's see, is there anything else that I wanted to talk about? I've been thinking for a while on how I wanted to go about making this. If I did, would it be a comic? Audio drama? The thing about audio drama is that if it is an audio drama, I don't have voice actors. I would have to use AI voices, and they have gotten a lot better since I first came up with this idea. So it makes me think, like, if I did audio, you don't necessarily have to worry too much about visuals. But, let's see, have to put audio editing to practice, at least make a thumbnail and things like that, but at the same time, AI voices, more limited range of things I'd be able to accomplish. But a comic, that's more time with the drawing, but you don't have to worry about the voice acting. But then it's a question of, like, where do I even put that? I don't know, there's a lot of facets to the overall idea. What time is it? Oh boy. That clock went out, so I can't see the time there. Okay, that's what time it is. Let's see. Let me think for a second. Oh, I love you too. I love you too. You're so cute. You're so cute. Come here. You're... Oh, my baby. Oh, my baby. I love you. Mwah. Oh. But basically, okay. The concept, the characters, the world. Let's see, did I talk about the concept? I did. Oh, yeah. I guess I could talk about that part. Besides, like, finding ways to incorporate more animal thing, I was thinking to myself, like, you know, in some fictional things, you know what? I'll save that for later. I won't talk about that right now. Okay, the characters, the world, the process, the excitement. I am excited about this idea. I've been wanting to do it, and I've been looking for a means to try. But, I'm still uncertain. I decided to go and, like, check different AI voice things, and I haven't... Yeah, just, like, nothing quite yet, basically, is the gist of that. Nothing quite yet. But I'm not sure. Do I have to do it all by myself? I will. I will do it all on my own. I'm mainly just talking about this so I have... Making this so I you know... I talk about it because I'm excited about the idea, and I like it. And I got no one else really to talk about it to. So, I think, as much as I can think of right now, I've talked about it. Concept, characters, world, process, excitement, evolution. Yeah, okay. Well, see you later then.